Welcome to Listening to UCR, a podcast production by the Faculty Welfare Committee of the Department of Statistics at the University of California in Riverside. My name is Daniel Jeske, and my co-host is Ezra Curran. Our guest on this podcast is Jose Wudka, a faculty member and a divisional dean in the College of Natural and Agricultural Sciences at UCR. Professor Wudka is also a former chair of the UCR Academic Senate.
Hi Jose, thank you for accepting to be in our podcast series.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start asking you about your academic and your administrative background.
Sure. I was born in Mexico in 1958. I went to the National Autonomous University for my bachelor degree in physics. Then I went to Boston for my PhD. Administratively, I started being interested in the academic senate. My philosophy was always that Senate is kind of the government and one should participate in it. Eventually, I became chair of the Committee on Educational Policy. I was representative system-wide of that committee. Then I became chair of the Committee on Research here, and I was representative system-wide. And then Mary Gavain, who was then chair of the division, suggested I run for chair. After that, the department asked me to be vice chair. And so I was vice chair for about a year. Then the position came out division dean.
How unusual is the shared governance structure at UC compared to other places you've been?
We are given enormous powers. In other institutions, the provost comes and says, "Dear Academic Senate, thank you for your service. You will do so and so."
Mm-hmm.
What is the role of the Senate versus the Chancellor when there's a search going on?
It depends on the search. For example, for a chancellor subcommittee chaired by the Senate, and it's usually chaired by the divisional chair. So when we were looking for Wilcox, I was chair of that subcommittee. 300 files.
There's that many files
yes.
for a chancellor.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. This idea that people would not want to come to UCR, that is a myth, disappeared about 20 years ago. People will come to UCR. I think it's a campus very attractive in many ways. There's always a concern when you bring somebody from the outside that they do not understand the limitations of the administration within the UC. There's a similar process to the others. For the provost, there is a committee that's advisory to the chancellor. We interview people, we choose we think is the best candidate. But in the end, the chancellor does not have to take any advice into consideration. The chancellor chooses whomever he or she.
Now, if the chancellor chooses to do that, doesn't that sort of undercut the power of the Senate?
It does. It seldom happens as a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
The chancellor can come and say, "This is a candidate I like. What do you guys think?" A vice chancellor will have a conversation with the advisory committee beforehand. We can agree to disagree, but at least the committee knows exactly the reasons behind that. Unwise chancellor would come and say, "Thank you for your help. I'll choose my cousin Vinny," and then and be done with it. The same thing with deans. It was advisory, in that case, to the provost, who just goes one notch down.
What do you think the challenges are at the campus now for newcomers? Because we have some administrative posts, I think, that are open.
From my perspective, business service is in vitro. Previous vice provost was not responsive to the needs of the campus. He created a very large administrative structure that was unresponsive to the changes. I think Jerry Bomati, who now adopted both portfolios, has an enormous challenge.
If somebody's doing that job well, what are they doing?
Okay, the mission is, what do faculty need? What does the campus need? How can we make that happen? If that implies taking reasonable risks, then we can have a conversation with the faculty, with the administration, and say, these are the risks, how far can we go, this is what we can do, and then move on.
Okay, so business services is one.
Student service. The campus is going to grow enormously. As you heard, the Chancellor's new goal is 35,000
Right.
students by 2035. We're going to have to maintain our profile of service.
Who sets this goal of 35,000 by 2035, and why should we think it is realistic or necessary?
Yes, this is the Chancellor. The reasons behind it are UC has enormous pressures from the state to grow. The state is growing, and we have a commitment to accommodate students. The reality is that UC will not build a new campus in the foreseeable future. The campuses that we have very limited growth possibilities. So the two campuses that can grow are Riverside and Merced.
Mm-hmm.
Riverside, we are a very poor campus in the sense that we depend enormously on tuition. If we want to serve our students better, we have to get more students. I mean, we don't use all the money of every single student to educate him or her alone, but we can use part of that money to improve the
I thought maybe there was some underfunding of students.
Historically, the funding per student between, say, Santa Cruz and UCLA, because there was the extremes, was UCLA was receiving at least twice the amount of money per student. That has changed, not as much as we wanted, but it has improved significantly. The reality is that, in fact, it should go the other way. We are going to grow, but there's no way we can afford to grow to the extent that we need to grow according to the state. We need to be favored, not because we are better or anything, but because we're going to serve many more students.
What do you think about the revolution of teaching towards online teaching and programs, professional programs, hybrid, flipped, all this?
I grew up in a very traditional, I'm sure you did too. Did you?
I did too.
Oh, so like you sit down, and there's usually the guy, because it's a man up there, at least professionally, and they tell you what's what, and you sit down and you write it, right? I've experienced teaching a flipped classroom. I can tell you it's exhausting.
I would think it's a lot more work.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
I can tell you the students complained. They hated me for it. They punished me in the evaluations, blah, blah, blah. But they learned. They did? They did learn. Because they had to, right? They would have to read before coming to class. And it took only a slight majority of the class to do the reading so that the others by the next class were shamed into just not sitting there and being like fish in a pond. If you have 300 students, you have to flip the classroom all by yourself. That's going to be a very big challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But, the numbers show that students learn better. They are more successful. They have to work. And in the end, if we give them the tools to succeed, mature students will appreciate it. Non-mature students will complain anyway. Yeah. And I think we're doing what we should. If you're tenured, I think you have a duty to experiment with those things, try to improve those, and take a risk. I think the merit and promotion process is flexible enough so that you explain what you did and why you did it and why it failed and how you improved it. Yeah. It's acceptable. Online is a different kettle of fish, as you know yourself. It requires much more serious commitment from students. They have to be more self-motivated. Which we have no way of measuring beforehand. Exactly. Yeah. There are programs that inherently you expect that to happen. For example, you have a terminal master's degree that is focused on older students, and you want it to be online because they have a life of their own, and they want to do this over the weekends, at nights, and so on. They are self-motivated, they're paying, and they know what it means to pay out of their own pockets as opposed to their parents' pockets. Yeah. And so I think that's more successful. Hybrid courses, I think, are better suited for undergraduate students. And some of our students have very complicated lives. And so giving them this flexibility is very good for them. And you probably wouldn't impose that a professor must teach online format? No, I can't do that. There might be situations when reality hits you. Let's say a random course, Statistics 100A, right? That is such an impacted course. You offer 389 students because that's how much the room fits. If you could put seats on the roof, you would have students hanging from the roof. Just imagine that one of those rooms becomes unoccupied. And it just has to be closed for a couple of quarters. What are we going to do? Those things can happen. Emergency situations. Yeah. In other cases, if you have students that are increasing at several hundred per year, the classrooms are not going to be there. And so there might be a period where reality forces us to consider online courses. I think the concern would be whether or not it's equally efficacious to teach students online. I personally have some doubts about it. But you had experience, right? I agree with you. I mean, I had students asking me if we could only have 2 lectures a week instead of 3 because they're busy at their jobs. Or can you not assign so much homework? I can't balance what I have to do at work and get home. So this goes back to the no way to really screen motivation and commitment. You can look at how they've done classes elsewhere, but you don't know what's inside. That's such a difficult question. It sounds like they're asking you to water down. Absolutely, they are. Yeah. In the end, what exactly you teach is what you teach. As we often are, we work on an emergency basis, right? When it hits the fan, we say, oh no, it hit the fan, let's fix it, right? You would think that people would say, this is excellent opportunity. We still have enough classrooms. We're getting tight. Let's have a conversation on how we can do this on online and try to address it. But I don't think we're doing it. Are you aware of any type of... why don't we just build a large building of classrooms? That doesn't even cost as much as a wet lab kind of research building. In fact, that's exactly what Musset did. Very large building with a very large number of classrooms of all sizes, kind of thing, well thought out.
Is there any building in the pipeline now that's coming up soon?
I do not know.
Yeah.
We can only stay in message continuously and not spread out. And so if we're going to say we need more classrooms, it should be we need more classrooms. That's what's going to be the main point. And every time the chair of the Senate meets with the chancellor, she'd say, what about the classroom building? How can we move this forward? When are we meeting with the president? What happened?
Yeah. Right now I see activities on the campus trying to squeeze out every last hour of the week for classroom slots.
Saturday classes.
Yes.
Classes, late evening, early morning, one day a week, not just Tuesday, Thursday, but Wednesday, Friday.
Absolutely.
And there's a limit to how much you're going to be able to squeeze out that way.
That is, at best, a temporary...
At best,
yeah. I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's more equitable.
Yeah.
I would hope the administration has realized that they're doing this because disasters come in.
Yeah.
And there's no stemming it. We have limited space. There's space that might be listed as usable, but it's really not usable.
Yeah.
We cannot convert everything into classroom space. I think the administration is aware of this. I'm not privy to any discussions as to whether the priority is to build a huge classroom building. I do know that the administration has a map out that shows all the future building constructions, and including a sculpture garden. And there's a transportation hub, which is going to be very needed. The two big projects, at least in Sina's at the moment, are the Piers renovation and Bachelor Hall renovation.
So does the college fund for these renovations, or does the chancellor's office?
It's a mix. And one of the problems that colleges have is that you don't know exactly what percentage of the mix falls where. It's a moving target. Concerning space, what the campus did, which I thought it was a good move, Jerry Bomodi took possession, really, of all space that he thought it was free. And then he went department by department saying, okay, I took possession of this, but do you need it? Yes, no, why? And he was responsible. And most department chairs, I'm sure. I mean, most people, if you're transparent and open about the needs and why you're doing things, and if people can help you, they will help you.
Mm-hmm. Well, related to space and possibly related to disagreement among different constituents on the campus is the idea of a STEM high school being on our campus.
Yes.
This has caused a lot of stir in the Senate, and I wonder what your thoughts about that are.
I have mixed feeling about the high school. I worry about, on the one hand, safety of the high school students in a college environment. I think many of the high school students would be vulnerable, and unfortunately, there are always predators around the college environment. We see that with our own college students. They are being hurt. They're more vulnerable, they're younger, they're minor. For them, on the other hand, it's a wonderful opportunity to be exposed to a college environment and to have access to all these installations.
I know the campus is concerned a little bit about what the burden on faculty might be if these STEM high school students are going to actually become engaged with the campus.
Yes.
But there's lots of assurances that have been sent out that it's completely up to the faculty member to become as engaged with those students as they want.
There's another part, is the instruction responsibilities for STEM high school, for any high school, is on the staff of the high school.
Mm-hmm.
And there are union regulations as to what the burden of teaching is. Concerns, if faculty are going to take a lot of teaching, then what's going to happen, the relationship between the principal and the staff saying, oh, what do you mean your physics? You're saying that you're teaching a full class when half your class is going up to the physics department to be taught by faculty there voluntarily. The staff member has responsibilities as to what the curriculum should be covered, in what way, and so on, that the faculty at UCR cannot, will not.
But then if you play that out and you say, okay, it's going to be minimal, it's not going to be a big burden because there's not going to be a lot going on, then what's the point of having the high school on the campus?
Absolutely.
There is a precedent for this in the UC system. I think it's UCSD has a high school on their campus.
And really, okay.
I think it's UCSD, or it could be UCLA, but one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding from the people I've talked to there is that it was looked upon as a grand idea.
Okay, and I hope it works. I hope it would be reassuring.
Yeah,
But
I think it was done differently there.
If they say, well, this is the model that we work, we consulted with them, that would be
That would have been good. Yeah.
Again, very useful. Saying we consulted with them,
Yeah.
this is what they told us worked, this didn't work, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Also, Davis, I understand they have a good partnership. I don't think the high school is in campus, but you have a good partnership with a high school. And again, but I don't know, I've never heard anybody say anything about any of this type of consultation.
No, right.
And that would be, again, reassuring.
Yeah.
I think a partnership is a good idea, actually. Instead of having them in here, we could be partners with them and help out each other.
It would get
solution.
UCR a little bit more visible in the community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A good relationship.
Apart from the budget, which is probably numbers 1 and 2 on your list, what other college-specific concerns are there that...
Well, space.
Right.
Space is a huge headache. Huge headache.
Mm-hmm.
Departments are fractured. They're getting more fractured. You guys are still one...
Well, we have a good number of our students in the other wing of Olmsted.
Yeah, but
it's still Olmsted.
Olmsted, right?
Yeah.
The physics is separated into 3. Chemistry is separated into 3. Math is 4 buildings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which are very, very separate. You guys are still... Earth science is still... But the reason, it's a bad reason, in a way. You're small departments. Right? When you start growing, I don't know where we're going to put you.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any more room here.
Right. And so, there's room above, but it's not empty room.
Right.
And so we don't build things. We can't grow. But we're going to grow 35,000 students imply large number of faculty.
Right.
And they have to be someplace.
But I don't know where the money is going to come for that either, because my understanding of the CNAS debt is a lot of it is because of the tremendous startup costs associated with hiring. So if you're going to go through another wave of hiring to match 35,000 students, who's going to be paying? So is it a myth that we're going to grow?
There's a small amount of bootstrapping that goes on with it. You get more students, there's more tuition, you can hire. That never actually covers the $1 million startup. They might cover a relatively modest, like a theorist or a mathematician, a statistician for a relatively modest startup costs. But not even regular faculty member in chemistry, junior faculty, has $1 million startup costs. And some of them are covered by the indirect cost recovery from the existing grants. But again, that doesn't quite make ends meet at the very end. And so how that's the circle's going to be, again, squared, I have no idea.
And you can't wait for the tuitions, because before you can get the tuitions, you have to have the infrastructure, right?
Otherwise, you're playing catch-up.
Absolutely. And you do not want to have the situation where students come and they say, "Where's my classroom?" It's like, well, it's out there in the lot where it says construction on the way, that kind of thing.
Well, or professors, right? Didn't we have a professor come here that we hired, and he said, "Where's my lab?" And then he left because we didn't have it.
I wish it was only one. We had several cases. We had many stop-the-clock actions. This is when you progress along the merit and promotion is stopped because of, sometimes it's because of childbearing. And that's fine. That's a happy reason to do it, right? If you have to do it because they promised the lab and it wasn't ready, and in 9 months, in a year and a half, 2 years went by and it was ready, that's a horrible reason.
Right.
Because on top of that person's professional life being damaged, even though you stop it, there's 2 years that person did not publish.
That's right. And that's going to hurt them to move.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also, it hurts the campus because that professor is telling everybody and their cousin that UCR promised a lab, and they just reneged on their promises.
Right.
So it's bad all around. All around. And how that's going to be done, I can only hope that somebody is actually being thoughtful planning and doing it in the right way and having some kind of Manhattan Project, collaborations. How we're going to build this thing.
I just have one question left because I don't understand the college structure fully. So you're the divisional dean.
Yes.
And we have department chair and we have the dean. So what is the relation between the three?
The dean is ultimately responsible for the college. She's appointed provost, and she's an administrative and an academic administrator. So she has a very broad set of responsibilities. The divisional deans we are under her. We serve at her pleasure. And there's also a student dean. This is Connie Nugent, and she's in charge of all the issues associated with undergraduates. Also grad students she touches upon, but we try to carry out her policies, and we try to support our departments and try to reconcile both, which is sometimes very hard. The dean has financial control of the college, and she has delegated very little, if anything, to the divisional deans. So I don't have a budget. I cannot say to statistics, you need to renovate this room, I'll pay for it. I cannot do that. I don't have the money. I have to go and ask for the college to cover that. The department chairs are chosen by the dean. I think it's the hardest job because this is the interface between the academic, instructional, and the administrative aspect of the campus. The divisional deans don't hire or fire the departmental chairs. The purpose is to support them in a measured way. And so there are department chairs that might need help. In the considered opinion of the divisional dean, they need the help. Realistically, sometimes the help they need won't be there. And so it's the unfortunate job of the divisional dean to explain that. Sometimes the help sought for is unreasonable, and then the divisional dean has a serious conversation with the chairs. In reality, all the chairs that I've seen in campus and CNS are reasonable chairs. The role of the divisional dean is then to try to support the chairs within the financial needs of the college, and at the same time interface with it. The deans are appointed by the provost is appointed by the chancellor by the regents by the governor, the governor by the people.
And our president is also appointed by the regents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the line of command.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Wonderful.
I think this was really, I don't know, great. It's a beautiful
Thank you.
conversation.
Yes, it was.
It was all departments.
Maybe they'll take our cue.
They should.